Hello and welcome to this online tutorial on how to use the Mario rig. My name is Nicholas Souza. I am an animation and visual effects instructor, and I am also an animation freelancer. So first things first, I'm going to try and keep this tutorial fairly simple and concise. There's a few things we got to go through to make sure that you are using my rig to its full potential and get you up to speed, and so you take full advantage of it. So I'm going to try and keep this as clear and concise as possible. I apologize if I'm a little jumbled. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, so there is going to be a little fumbling here and there. But first things first, what this is not. This is not a tutorial on how to create Mario from scratch. If you're looking for a detailed tutorial on how to model and texture and rig, sorry, that's not going to be covered here. This is just so you can use my character and rig as efficiently as possible. So I made this character inside of Blender. That's free open source software from the Blender Foundation. And I've uploaded this model to YouTube. It's completely modeled, as accurate as I could get it. It's textured, and it's got a rig in it. So the rig is the skeleton and the control system that animators use, and this tutorial is centered around that, so I can get you up to speed as quickly as possible, and you use it to its full efficiency, as I have stated. I created this. Obviously, I didn't create Mario, the character. That belongs to Nintendo. So while we're on this topic, make sure if you download this from BlendSwap that you do not use this for commercial purposes. This is Nintendo's character. This is fan art. I do have it under the Creative Commons license simply because I just want you to credit me with the model, the rig, and the texture if you do decide to use it. But this is Nintendo's character and their concept, so don't use it for commercial purposes, please. We don't want Nintendo, knocking on your door and demanding you to answer for your unspeakable crimes. So please don't use this for commercial purposes, only for non-commercial use. And if you're a student, feel free to use it in your projects. Just credit me for the creation of the 3 items that I previously mentioned. So I created this item because I was working on this for a little bit, on and off, because first off, I wanted to expand my skill set. I've always been interested in animation as an entire field, 3D in particular, but I love all forms. But I'm always looking to expand my skill set and my experience. So to that end, I decided to try modeling Mario, and eventually this grew into not just modeling him, but texturing him and rigging him and getting him ready for specific projects. And I'll go into that a little bit later, but this was a way for me to experiment and expand my skill set. It also allowed me to get more used to Blender. More used to Blender? Oh, that's 2 o'clock in the morning anyway. It allowed me to get used to Blender more. And another reason I wanted to do this is because I thought it'd be a really cool way to connect with other Blender artists out there, because I don't want this just to be a project from me. I want people to download this. I want them to try it out. I want them to give me reviews and critiques and say, your rig has got this is good about it, but this is bad. This really needs improvement. Could you try adding this feature in? So I am looking for suggestions and improvements. And so feel free to email me. You can get my contact info from below. Just put in BlendSwap Mario in the description header, so that way I know what this is pertaining to. I just don't delete it. So I'm looking to improve this as we go, and I'm also looking to connect with other Blender users out there. And another thing is I really wanted to provide a really high quality model of Mario, not just to improve my skills, but also to provide that for other people who are learning Blender. The Blender Foundation has been exceptional at providing tutorials, and not just Blender Foundation, but a variety of other YouTubers as well. But Blender Foundation has really made it easier for students to start learning 3D because their entire software package is open source. BlendSwap has all these awesome assets you can download from, and I felt like I wanted to give something back and to and kind of improve my experience as well as the people who are coming in. So that all culminated into what you're seeing before you right now. So with that being said, let's actually jump into the Blender file that you would download from BlendSwap, which, by the way, really quickly, if you haven't checked out BlendSwap yet or Blender, go to blender.org and check out the software itself. It's free open source stuff, so you don't have to pay for it. It's open source and it's awesome, and just check it out, okay? BlendSwap is the site where you can download free Blender assets, and that's where you can download my model from. So go on there, download it, and then come back to this tutorial if you haven't downloaded it yet. Maybe you stumbled upon this somehow. So now that we kind of talked about where I came from and my approach to this, let's actually open up the Blender file, and I'm going to go over what Mario actually looks like. And obviously, you get a little taste there with the image I rendered at over here. But let's actually jump into the file now, and let's actually look at this. So the first thing I'm going to mention right off the bat is that Mario does not, or the Mario file does not have a light source in it. If you jump straight into the render viewport shading, which, yes, this is in cycles. I wanted this to have some global illumination in there. He's not going to look as good as he should. So I'm going to pop in a light source really quickly here so you kind of get an idea of what he will look like at render time. And let's bump this up to, I don't know, say 3. And we'll do a quick little render over here. And let's zoom in. So I tried modeling this to be as accurate as I could get it. I downloaded images from online, I put them in as orthographics, and I made some creative decisions based on the other pictures I got. And I think I did a fairly good job at getting it as close as could be. And I'm really quite happy with the way it turned out. Something else to notice that, yes, this is meant for cycles render because I do have subsurface scattering in his skin. I did want to kind of keep that cartoony feel, make him look a little bit more rubbery, not precisely 100% human skin. But I did want to add that, just a little touch of realism to him just so he could pop out if I were to say, use this with a specific project. So this is meant for use in cycles, and, everything's been done as close as I could get it. And if you do want to see what he looks like right off the bat, in your downloadable file after you download it from BlendSwap, you will have to add in that light source to check it out. I didn't include extra lights because I didn't want users to download it and then get rid of the extra ones after downloading. So this way you don't have to worry about it. You can just throw in your own lighting system for your project. So let's go back into Solid over here. Before I actually jump into the rig, which there are quite a few things to go over here, and we'll tackle them each at a time, but I do want to go over everything that I've included inside the layers down here. They all have specific sections that I would like you to be aware of, so that way you know what you're getting into. So right off the bat, the bottom left layer over here is the entire rig. You can see here that this has a bunch of different control shapes. I'll get the main model back up over here. A bunch of different shapes which do different items. I tried to keep everything as straightforward as possible. I do have additional attributes, but mainly everything is going to be controlled through the control curves over, well, they're not really curves, they're polygon objects, but they're going to be controlled through these icons over here. So this is where the rig is. We're going to come back to that in just a second. But the first layer over here, the top left, this looks a little odd. This is not meant to be rendered. This is the puppet rig. And basically what this is, it is the Mario model that has been cut up into different sections. So that way you can animate this with extremely fast feedback, if not instantaneous. And this is meant to be used for posing your character, for real-time feedback from when you hit the play button down here. And that way you can see how everything is doing without having to render out a play blast. I always try to include this in my models, or rather my rigs, so that way we have a lot more flexibility. We don't have to waste a lot of computing power. It does up the amount of vertices in the file, obviously, but I think that's a pretty good trade-off, so that way you can animate unhindered as much as possible. So that's the first layer over here. I'm going to turn that off, and we're going to go to the second one over here. This is the actual Mario model. This is the full subdivided. Here you can see I've got a subdivision of 2 on here. And this is the just the body, the eyes and the hat and stuff are separate. We're going to get that in just a second. I'm going to turn the rig layer off for a moment. And let's actually have a look at the original geometry here, which I'll turn off the subsurface. And I try to keep this as low poly as possible, so that way we could have this animate as smoothly and as quickly as possible and not worry about the deformations. Oh, you can see here I left this on the blink shape for the blend shape. I'll come back to these a little bit later. Let's go back to basis. But again, I try to keep this as low poly as I could. There are going to be this isn't perfect. As I was rigging this, I wanted to see how few edge loops I could get away with for this character, because Mario by his nature is meant to be low poly, and I wanted to see if I could keep it as low poly as I could. And down over here in the hips, I probably could have used 1 or 2 more edge loops. The shoulders as well. Mainly because when you're doing all these deformations, having those extra edge loops will allow you to create more detailed shape, particularly in areas that have to move around a lot. And I think there are just enough to cover the bases, but there probably could have been a couple more so that way it would smooth out a little bit. So it's not absolutely perfect, but I think it does a decent job. And chances are, for what Mario is going to be used for here, it will do just fine. But let me know what you think and let me get some feedback on this. I think there probably could have been at least one more for the hips down here and for the shoulders, but I think we can get away with it. So with that being said, let's actually go back into object mode here, and I'll turn the subsurface back on. And don't be afraid to turn this off if you want to get real-time feedback, or not real-time feedback, but if you want to do an OpenGL render or a play blast, you can turn this off and see how it's performing. So don't be afraid to do that either. So we go over to this layer over here, and this is the accessories for Mario. So you have the buttons, you've got the hat, and the eyebrows, mustache, and the glove thingies. I don't know what these are, but they're the weird divots on Mario's gloves. None of these items are selectable because I didn't want the animator to have to worry about selecting the different parts of the rig and then getting stuck on the geometry. The main body is selectable, but that's because I wanted to make sure you had access to these blend shapes and to the various other functions on the character over here, which we'll get into. You cannot translate this, however, or rotate or scale. That is locked out from you. So if you accidentally do select the model, don't worry about accidentally moving it. I've locked that out for you already. That is taken care of through the rig. So let's see. We went over that. Here we go. So now we have the suspenders. I kept this separate because I didn't want to build these into the body geometry. I wanted these to be a separate object. Usually when I see Mario, he does have the overalls integrated into his body, but I think that is to make sure that the character does not have a crazy amount of vertices, and it's to save on the amount of polygons in the game engine, and to make sure that there aren't intersections happening between the shoulder and the overall strap over here. So I think those are the reasons for that, but I wanted this to be a little bit more realistic, so I probably bit off a bit more than I can chew with this entire project. But with that being said, I kept this separate, and you actually don't have to worry about this too much, because as you animate the arm over here, I've actually rigged this so the strap will actually follow the arm through the majority of its motions. It's not 100% perfect. You can see as I bend this back, it starts to kind of do a little S-curve over here. So it's not perfect, but there's another armature in here, which if you go to this tab right over here, this is an armature specifically for the strap that will allow you to make updates to it. So I can move this, I can rotate it, though I don't really recommend the rotation part. All of these bones will control specific vertices on this strap, and it will allow you to make updates and make some slight changes so that way it doesn't deform 100% horribly. I've tested this out a few times, and most of the time I can get away with just animating the arms here. I might have to do a little bit of animation just to get the straps back over, but I'm pretty satisfied with it. Again, I look forward to your feedback and see what you think. I didn't want to have to make an animator do all the counter animation or animate the strap 100% of the time. I tried doing end cloth, but when I did it, I tried constraining the cloth between 2 points, and that would make it flip out. It seems like cloth is better suited to items that just drape from one particular connection. So it wasn't really suited for this. Maybe I could try doing a curve that's dynamic or something, or maybe just a plain old spline with bones running through it. I'm willing to experiment with this, but for right now, I'm going to keep it on this, and we'll see how that works. So that was the armature for the suspenders, and we had the actual suspenders themselves. So those were all the main pieces that all the main pieces you're going to be using with your projects, but there are 4 additional layers over here that have additional items in them. And I included these so that way you could adapt this and add on to it and send files back to me if you want, or just keep it for yourself. I wanted this to be as available to you as possible. So let's actually jump over to this layer right over here, and bam! These are the corrective shapes for the character. So if you don't know what corrective shapes are, really quickly, sorry, I'm like zooming around like a maniac over here. Let's actually go back to the character over here. And if you don't know what corrective shapes are, basically, you can see as I move the arm up, We're getting some nice and muscle action over here from the shoulder. So this would be his deltoid. Though technically, I don't know if Mario has a deltoid. He usually has cylinders for arms. But anyway, over here, I'm going to go over to the shape keys for blend shapes. And if we look for the corrective shape left arm up 65, if I turn this off, you will see that if I rotate this enough, the shoulder has now collapsed. This is what is not supposed to happen when you rotate your arm. And essentially, these are blend shapes with the sole function of pushing the vertices out and making sure the muscles bulge correctly. And these are all driven by custom drivers. So you don't have to worry about animating these. Now, as I said, there are going to be mistakes with this. I did not create a shape key or a corrective shape for every single position on Mario. I just don't have that kind of time. So I've done this for what I think would be the majority or most of his movements if you were to animate him. So I am expecting folks to find some specific shapes that are not covered, or maybe there's a weird combination of shapes that just don't work. So please email me. I'll make a list, and I probably won't update this for a while, but I will take all your suggestions. I'll combine them, and then I'll do it all in like one big new release if we get enough people interested in this. But getting back to the blend shapes, this is what they are used for, and I have included them inside of the file on this layer right over here. So you can update these and make changes to them, or you can add your own. I've just kept them in this layer, but you can observe my work and you can kind of see how I approached it, or you can make changes to them. And if you don't know how to use the corrective shapes, if you go onto the Blender Wikipedia page, there is an add-on that will allow you to, that is specifically there for corrective shape keys. It's very, very useful. I recommend you check it out. So let's see here. We went over the corrective shapes, which you'll notice will actually correspond with the groups. Well, they're not really groups. They work differently in Blender, but they'll work out with the items over here in the outliner. So I actually specifically have one for corrective shapes here. So they're all parented under this empty over here. And I've tried to do that inside of my outliner as much as possible to keep it nice and clean. So that's what these different sections are for. So let's go over here. Now these are important. These are the empties for the overalls. So as I am animating the character's arm here, these empties are the ones that are parented to the geometry, to specific vertices. So I experimented a little bit, and I found what I thought was the best vertices to parent them to, but I discovered that you needed some additional control, so that is where the second armature came into play over here. So these empties are needed to make sure the bones over here are following the empties, which are then following the geometry. So do not delete these. These are actually serving a purpose. If you get rid of these, you will ruin the rig for the armature. Now, usually I would just hide this from the outliner so you couldn't see this, but I wanted to include this in a separate layer so it's a little bit easier to access. It's not in the usual layers over here, and if you wanted to make changes. So up to you, but don't delete this, whatever you do. So let's see, we went over the corrective shape keys, we went over the suspenders over here. Let's see, this is a layer that just has all the different shapes that I used to create the custom shapes on the actual rig here, and then I color coded them a little bit later. So if you want to make changes to the shapes, or you want to make your own, or make changes to the ones I have, feel free to mess around with this layer right over here, and they are grouped under the geometry bone shape group. I realize that these are technically not groups in Blender, but it's just a little bit easier for me to know what this is being used for. So that's why I named it group over here. And what is this last one? I really should have deleted this. This is actually a duplicate of all the geometry that is currently inside of my scene. So these are just backup geometry. I made this so that if I made a mistake to the rig, I could just duplicate this and put it back in the main layer. So you really don't need this layer. That should have been taken out before I put it up on Blend Swap. So that's my mistake. I'll take that out in later versions, but you can go ahead and delete this one. So now we went over all of the layers, what's included. We went over making sure you got a light source. It's meant for cycles. Which, before I go further, his skin does have a custom node tree over here. I keep saying custom, but obviously it is. Obviously I made it. So you can experiment. You can have a look and see how I did this. All the files should be packed in, so as you download it, you should get all the image textures that I made with it. And you can experiment around with this. I'm not going to go into this whole node system over here. but I just wanted to mention that really briefly. This is really about the rig. So now we get to the main part of the tutorial about how to use this rig correctly, or at least all the different features of it. So here I've got the main controller, which is the master. This is where you would actually move Mario into position for starting your animation. I wouldn't grab the COG control over here. I would use this for the start. And let's start with the main section over here. You've got your typical COG control, which works out just fine. That's self-explanatory. Working up to the spine here, there are 2 bones for the spine, but you only have to control 1 to get full functionality of the back. That's very nice. Now over here, I have a custom property that will allow you to have the spine follow the COG or to stay independent. So if I turn this off, for example, you'll see it just reset because there's a different bone here. If I rotate the COG now, the spine is staying put. It is not moving. So that is what the different... so this is now following the spine. 1 is equal to on, and 0 is equal to off. So I do usually have this follow the COG because it does make a little bit more sense. It's kind of difficult to have your spine kind of point in 2 different directions. It can get a little weird looking. So I usually leave that on. But over here on the spine, that's what that does. And there's actually a similar setup for the head. You can see here as I'm rotating the spine that my head is not following. It is staying not planted, but it is not rotating. So if I come over here, you will see that I have another attribute for follow spine. I usually leave this one off. But again, you have the ability to turn this on, so that way this will now rotate. So really up to you. So I'll turn, oh, that's a spine here. Let me just reset the rotations. So we'll set that back to 0 so it doesn't follow. Let's see here. Oh, let's get his hat stuff back and the suspenders while we're at it, I guess. Now, this is really cool over here. I do have an animation sequence planned for this guy. I'm kind of waiting for the blasted snow to melt. It mostly has, but I'm also waiting for spring to bloom in before I add this. But I've also included the wings for his character, so that way I can do a little animation sequence with this a little bit later. But I figured I'd throw it in for you guys as kind of a little goodie. You can animate this property as much as you like, and I've also added in a texture for it. There's just a plain white diffuse texture, so that'll work out just fine from Mr. Mario. And like I said, you can animate this, so as he maybe puts the power up on, they just poof into existence. And I thought that was cool. So let's go back into solid viewport shading here. Let's see, we went over that. Going over to the eyes, there are a couple different attributes here. Follow head, self-explanatory like the other spine and head here. Currently this is off, so it's not following the head. So this will allow you to track an object. Or you can turn this on all the way to 1, so it does follow. Up to you how you want to do it. Now, over here, oh yes, also, before I get into that, I should talk about why we're not seeing pupils here. When I rigged Mario, his eyes are not perfectly round. They are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of ovally, or I don't know how to describe it. They're kind of, if you took a sphere and you stretched it out along the z-axis, that's kind of what it looks like. So I couldn't just rotate his eyeballs. It would have popped out of his head, and that would have been interesting, but it's not what I wanted. So what I had to do here is I had to rig up some additional shapes so that they would follow and rotate around the eyeball. So let's go over to, if you go over to material section, you actually can see the irises. So as I move this around now, his eyes will actually look at the controller object. They were doing it before, it's just you couldn't see it because we were in solid viewport shading. So over here, I do have these going around the eyes. These circles over here allow you to adjust one of the eyeballs independently and then still move this controller around. So you get a little bit additional control. We do have some attributes over here. We already went over follow head. Hide specular, I do recommend you keep that on 1 because if I turn this off, there are additional objects that will hide the specular eyes from the viewport. They will still be viewable at render time, but these are used so that you get the specular highlight of the eyeball. So just leave these on. I can't really think of a reason you'd want to turn it off, but I did add that in there for you. Also, if we turn on, if we actually go over to the puppet rig over here, and let's say you don't want to work in material, you want to work in solid, if you turn on the show eye reference, I rigged up these empties with these shapes here, so that way you can kind of get an idea of where his eyes are looking. You'll also note that the feedback is a lot faster. These will only show up in the puppet rig. They will not show up inside of the main geometry. But if you don't really have a really like beefy computer, I figure this would be good for some faster feedback here. So you can just turn that off if you don't need them. And we'll go back over to these 3 layers because I like to see them in the full version. So over here, going on to the face, I don't have a lot of facial controls. I would like to add in some additional stuff like, you know, some squash and stretch with lattices, not just that for like the whole character. I'd like to add in, you know, some cheat control, maybe some emotional stuff down here. But I definitely want to do that in a later pass. I've been working on this far longer than I would like to admit. And if I don't do this now, this is probably never going to see the light of day. So we're going for it. So coming back over to the eyebrows over here, we have blinks on both eyes. So that way you can get a little bit more character detail in there. And let's move over. I'll jump over to the hips over here. These are the round spheres, so you can control Mario's hips here. Do a little, you know, little hip action. Very cool. These also have a follow COG control. So currently they're set to 1. I can't really think of an instance where you don't want the hips to follow the COG. But this will disable them from following if you have to have it for a specific situation. So up to you if you want to turn that off, but I usually leave it on. Now by default, the legs are set to IK. I'm not going to bother explaining what those are, but basically in IK mode, the feet will stay planted on the ground, and these boxes over here will allow you to move the feet, and they have custom attributes over here, so you can get a peeling of the foot, or you bend it back around the heel here. And this is actually the peeling here. So this is the whole peeling of the foot, and this is when you peel the heel. So he's like bending around his toes there. We have pivoting from the toe. This goes negative to positive, so you can kind of like stamp out a cigarette or something. I don't know if Mario... I don't think Mario would smoke, though. He seems like a pretty non-smokeless dude. I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry. It's like 2:30 in the morning. All right, so let's see. We went side to side around the... around the foot over here. We've got the wiggle toes, because why not? And then of course you have your what the heck do they call this? Your knee control over here using a pole vector. So that's pretty standard for an IK leg, but we also have the ability to change it to FK. So you see these little guys on the outer edge of the arm and leg over here. This is the IK-FK switch. This will also allow you to change the visibility of your controls. So right now, my IK controls are at 1, but I can turn my FK controls on for the leg. But currently, if I rotate this, nothing happens. This is because my leg is still in IK mode. When my switch is at 0, it's fully IK. But if I go over to 10, now nothing happens with the foot, but the leg for FK will now work. And that is fully on 10. Whoop, not that one. This is fully on FK now. So I can turn the IK switch off, and I can continue to animate using FK. I do usually keep the legs on IK, though, because it is a lot simpler, and you can get the collision with, you know, let's say like the ground plane here. Something else that is really cool, though, if you have both these on, you can also set this to 5, and you can sort of get a blend of the two. It won't be 100% accurate, but you will actually have full functionality from both. And you can also just pose the character, say, in IK, and then you can animate the property here for the switch so that way you go from one position to the other. So I find that to be very, very helpful with animation. But like I said, I'm looking forward to some feedback from you guys. Let's see. Did I reset? Here we are. Double tap A, Alt R. There we go. And I'm just going to set this back to there, and we'll turn this off. So that's pretty much the whole leg. We're going to jump over to the arm, which, tut. This should have... Oh, where are my controls over here? We'll get into that in just a second. So by default, the arms are in FK over here. And over here on the wrist for the FK, I have finger controls visibility. So here, these are all the FK controls for all of the fingers. So here we've got a knuckle control, so you can move the fingers down. You can also... Oh, I should be on normal. Shame. If you are going to animate this, make sure you are in normal orientation, not global. Otherwise, your rotation axes will not match up with the orientation of the joints. Now, as I was saying over here, you can rotate the fingers. I try to rig them so that way you don't have to animate 3 bones. You just have the knuckle for the main part, and then the next control over here for the next 2 phalanges, as it were. So we've got that. Same thing for, it might take a second to reset, but same thing for the thumb over here. This will have its own set of blend shapes and everything. Good to go. Everything is also following for the divots over here. But we're going to have a quick look at the IK control for the arm. Now, the reason I have the finger controls on the wrist over here is because, let me turn this off. Over on the IK switch, which we will set back to 0 here, so it goes back to IK, I have a set of controls just for the IK arm. So let's turn FK off. And in addition, on the box here, there are finger controls for IK. I could not figure out a good way to have a set of finger controls just for FK and IK. I was having some difficulty with that. In all honesty, what I might do is go back to the rig and just have you control the actual geometry bones. Usually I try to keep the bones for the geometry separate from the bones that are in the IK and FK. So a simpler solution might be just to have you animate those bones directly instead of having this on and off action. But I wanted to keep them separate if possible. So that way it'd be easier to edit, and that way I don't have to worry about messing up with the skin weights. But we'll see how this goes. So I do have a set of finger controls for IK as well as FK on the arm. So just be aware of that. So this will control the visibility for those controls over here, which we will turn off for the time being. Again, you got your pole vector constraint over here. Let's see. So I have the additional IK controls here. I mean, obviously you can move this box around, so that way you have the IK control, and this will stay put. However, I have some additional controls here that will allow you to maybe do some parkour with Mario over here. I mean, he does jumping and stuff, and you know, he gets around, but I thought it'd be really cool to have some parkour ability here. So you actually can peel from the hand. So just like the foot, you can peel the whole hand around the fingertips over here. So that way your character can, like, you know, as he leaps over a table, the hand just doesn't come up right away. It kind of peels off of it. Now, there is a bit of a limitation here. If you go too far, you can pivot the fingers way beyond what they should be. So it looks like Mario has a very disfigured hand all of a sudden. This was the way I rigged it and the way I had to go about setting it up. This is a limitation with it, but I didn't think this was something that would be a huge cause for concern. I'm going to try and revisit this so that way you cannot go beyond this value here. Right now I have mine set to 5, but if you just move the box back over, so that way you can see this kind of snaps back into place, and we can, you know, move this down here. So it's not a perfect system, but I thought this would be better. Well, it's not that I thought it would be better, in all honesty. It was just the way that I ended up creating this. It is a little bit of a limitation, and it is something I'm going to try working around, but it is an issue that you need to be aware of if you are going to be using this. So I just want to throw it out there in the open for everyone to see, and I'm going to try and go back and fixing it later if I can. Or maybe I'll just have to redo the whole thing. But for right now, there is that stretching issue to be aware of. So let's see. We had the peeling of the hand. Here, you can actually peel the palm. So I'm going to move this in again so that I don't have to worry about that stretchiness. So here, you can actually peel around the palm. And again, you can go a little too far here. So I might actually just have to move this down a little bit and in. Basically, if the arm is all the way stretched out, if it's locked, you can end up with that stretching. So a good indicator to see if you're too far out is if the arm is perfectly, like, ridiculously straight. So if you add just a little bit of bend back in the arm so it looks a little bit more natural, you shouldn't get that stretching issue from there. So here you can see that peeling of the palm, I can only go so far before my fingers interject here. But you do have the ability to use this. So you've got peeling of the hand, so you can peel the hand first going around the knuckles, and then you can slowly peel the whole hand around the tips of the fingers over here. So I thought that'd be really cool to add in. We also have, let me set this back. So let's see, you have the pivoting of the palm. So that way, what happens here is if I need to, you know, leap off of a table or something, or maybe as I adjust my hand, maybe I'm moving it to the side, I'm not going forward. So this allows me to pivot around this area over here. And the back area, as I go negative, it allows me to pivot kind of around the thumb a little bit, which I'm going to get into a little bit more. There's additional control for this. So by default, the thumb is going to just follow the entire hand. It doesn't stick on the table. But if you set the thumb stick all the way up to 5 here and try pivoting the palm again, this will allow you to rotate your hand and the thumb will stay on the table. So that way you can get a little bit better peeling action. If you turn on the stick control visibility, you actually have the ability to adjust this thumb a little bit more. So you have additional control here, and I'll keep rotating that. You can also pick this up, so that way your thumb will stay on the table or drag a little bit. If I move the whole box, the whole thing will go up, so you won't see it. But you have additional control to change where the thumb is peeling from, as well as picking the whole hand up and keeping the thumb on the table. So that way you have a lot more control over what this thumb is doing. Because I usually found that just through I don't do parkour at all. So, hey, any parkour guys out there, let me know if this is going to be helpful at all, or anyone who's done any like major aerobics or anything. I've noticed that usually when I'm like getting off the ground or something, I'll peel from the palm, and maybe my thumb will stick on the ground a little bit more. So this allows you to get that additional control, especially when you do the pivoting of the palm over here. Okay, and I will turn this off. I'll set this back to 0, so the thumb is not sticking at this point. You do get that a little bit more with the peel palm, but that should be happening anyway. Your thumb should be rotating regardless of if you are pivoting from the side or not. If you always peel forward on the palm like this, your thumb is going to rotate. So you have all these different attributes here to get many different actions out of the hand. I will admit, it's not a clear-cut system just yet. I'm still kind of experimenting with it a little bit, and this was really my first time at a rig like this. So I would like your feedback on how it performs. I do think it is a little clunky with the finger controls right now. So in another update, once I get some feedback, hopefully I get some feedback, and I'll see what everyone says and see what the recommendations are, and we'll have another major update. So hopefully everyone will like it and will want to improve on it. So let's see. Let's set this back. I believe that went over everything. We went over this already. So let me go ahead and turn the IK visibility off. Oh, sorry. There is also the finger controls over here. I briefly mentioned that. There's also a cube over here that allow you to update the thumb as well. So you can still rotate this, but still adjust the thumb a little bit. So there's many layers of control over here. So let's turn this off. That's back at 0. I will hide the IK, turn FK back on, turn the switch back to 10, and I will reshow the fingers for FK. So let's see. I believe that will cover everything inside of my rig over here. I didn't really go over how to animate or how to do all the fancy modeling and stuff. This was specifically just to get you a basic understanding of how I created the rig over here. I also did so with the expectation that you have some experience in animation, so I did go a little quickly. I'm not expecting you to be a beginner at this point, so I do apologize if not everything made sense. Because I've mentioned like blend shapes and armatures and all this other stuff. Maybe you're not quite familiar with that yet. So, feel free to download this anyway and try it out. And you can always email me and I can, just give a brief summary or something. Just don't be mad if I don't email you back right away, because I do have other things that are keeping me fairly busy. So please understand if I don't email you back right away. I will really appreciate your feedback on this, and hopefully we can, adapt and adjust this file so that way it just gets more and more awesome as it goes forward. So with that being said, that's going to cover the character. I just uploaded this to BlendSwap, so hopefully by the time this YouTube video goes up, it will be approved by the BlendSwap site, and we'll go from there. So with that being said, I hope everyone enjoyed this little tutorial, and I hope everyone will have fun using it, and I really look forward to seeing the animation. So feel free to send me a link to your YouTube video if you've used my model. And again, please just credit me because I did work really, really hard on this. I did want to make it as the best possible quality that I could, and I'm still looking forward to improving it. So feel free to email me with questions, post your YouTube videos, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun animating. And with that being said, I'm going to go to bed. So everyone have fun animating. Nick Souza signing off. Cheers.